House appraised significantly lower than my offer. How aggressively would you negotiate? First-time home buyer here. Finally had an offer accepted but house appraised for over $100K under our offer. We are allowing a $25K gap per our contract. Is it reasonable to try to negotiate to appraised price plus the gap? Our local market is still competitive but certainly not what it was in a year ago. That being said, inventory is essentially non-existent. I certainly don't want to lose the house, but by the same token, overpaying this much does not sit well with me. Financing is not an issue in this case. One of the only benefits of looking this long is that our down payment is 30 plus. Depends on the house cost $100,000 on $1 million, they may work with you. $100,000 on $500,000, they may wait for other offers depending what they received. That's a lot of difference. Any more details? $100K on $700K is a lot different than $100K on $300K. Does the appraisal seem correct? Any obvious mistakes? I had a guy appraise a 4BR house as a 3 before. Told me bedrooms didn't impact value. He was a stone-cold moron. You could try to negotiate lower. Could walk away. Could challenge the appraisal. I'm not an expert, just a lurker. But I would 100 negotiate that. Be prepared to walk away, but at the same time I don't think they're going to have a lot of people waiting in the wings who are willing to pay $100K over appraisal and have the cash to do so. I had a gap of 90 on a $600K house. We had funds and contract to cover $30K gap. We tried to meet the seller halfway. They didn't budge. We noped out. House back on the market the next week at the same price. And never sold. Bought a house that appraised at price like 2 months later. I have no regrets. This is where your agent earns their dollars. They know your market, this house, and the details of your deal. All of that matters greatly. And their job is to help you sort it out. If it's below your appraisal gap, you can walk away from the contract with your earnest money. But the real question is, do you want the house? Last one I bought, the appraisal was low and the seller 50-50 feet the difference with me. I asked them to cover it all. They came back with that. Do you think the seller will relist it and look for a cash offer? Or do they need to sell? Don't negotiate against yourself. You have an objective measure of value. Whether it is accurate or not, the worst thing you can do is be emotional about it. There's always another house. I would offer appraisal $25,000 as stated. The seller has no idea if you can afford more. And rate risk going up again, which doesn't bode well for them. Let them counter. If they do, come up another $10,000, $25,000 final offer if you really want the house. Be ready to walk unless you're okay with overpaying. None of us know the language in your contract. If you have an appraisal contingency with wording that you would pay $25,000 over the appraised amount, then that's what you are going to do if you were in my market. Our local market is still competitive but certainly not what it was in a year ago. That being said, inventory is essentially non-existent. You can try, but if the market is the way you say it is, this may be difficult. Yes, it's worth negotiating in that no harm asking. When you negotiate, know your BATNA. If you don't have an advantage, you just have to accept seller's number. I have other buyers waiting. Depends on whether the seller needs to sell. If it was me, I wouldn't negotiate with you. If you were willing to pay that for the house, others almost certainly will also. Appraisal isn't the same as what it'll sell for, unfortunately. What an independent person says the house is worth is very different than what some idiot who really wants the house will pay for it. Give negotiation a shot, but it might end up with them looking for a better offer. it is likely that the seller will find many buyers able to finance the purchase that far over the appraised amount. Go negotiate aggressively. Their response: you want the house or not? Depends on too many factors not listed here. I wouldn't lose the house over it, especially if you anticipate any growth in the 3-4 annual range. However, I cannot say that I have never and would never pay a dime over appraised value, but 30 down might be enough to change my mind. I would definitely try to negotiate, but don't be offended if they don't meet your wants or budget. All appraisals aren't necessarily what's the house is worth, especially on a home that expensive. I have had different appraisers come to wildly different numbers before. Just FYI, some friends share your perspective, but they keep losing houses to higher bidders. We're in the Bay Area, and homes sell for well over their appraisal. House is worth what you think it is. $1 million house in a $300,000 neighborhood doesn't make the $1 million house a $300,000 house. It just means the bank won't loan the million to buy it. We had to switch lenders after 2 homes we were under contract for came in under offer. The first one we knew there would be a little gap, but it was closer to $50K. The second one was also under, and everyone agreed it was a bad appraisal. Got a new lender and it appraised $20K over offer. Some appraisals are just bad. Had a low appraisal on a home I sold for a parent. Apparently the idiot appraiser forgot to include the detached 2-car garage in the appraisal. Called and she said I was bothering her as she was just leaving for vacation. She fixed her screw up and home appraised for more than contract price. If I were the seller, I would make sure everything is accounted for. You should have it appraised by someone else. And look for comps in the area. We did this and our mortgage broker got us the appraisal we needed from a second person. I would look at the appraisal report and decide if you feel it's accurate first. Our first appraiser was terrible and dinged for a bunch of inaccurate things. It was taking too long to dispute, so we ended up switching lenders. The new one sent a good appraiser who knew the area and it worked out. I would walk away. The only way house prices come down is us if people like you fight for the appraisal price. Go get it. That's not $100K you're fighting for. That's $100K 7 every year. For 30 years. Which end up hundreds of thousands of dollars. Don't let them take you for this. How about negotiating creative concessions such as points? That would be less expensive for the seller but save me lots of money. Counter lower to what is acceptable to the bank and more in line with the appraisal. As difficult as this is, you must remind yourself this is a business transaction and to take your emotions out of the equation. That means you walk if the seller doesn't accept your new counteroffer. Period. That is a lot of money to overpay. If a life change happens once you own the house, you need to be able to still afford this house or be able to sell it without a loss or as little as possible. Do not cut off your nose to spite your face. Depending on the type of loan, you could request another appraisal. Check to see if the comps are suitable and talk to the lender. Market value should weigh more heavily if there were other offers at the listing price. How does Zillow value the property? You just walk away. Clearly you overestimated value of the house or having some FOMO. Just walk away. Appraisal comes out lower than market value is very common. Different appraiser will give you a different price. The homeowner doesn't have to lower their price at all because appraisal price does not always represent the true market value. You should definitely shoot your shot. Just keep in mind most homeowners are very sensitive. They all think their home worth more. Try it out and let us know.